Xylem and phloem. So in blue here is the vascular cambium. The xylem is on the inside, phloem's on the outside. And then do you remember this develops into the cork and the cork cambium? Right, the cork cambium makes the cork. And the bark is the phloem and the cork cambium and the cork. It's everything from the vascular cambium out. Okay? If you weren't here, that makes no sense to you, I'm sure. But that's why I say it's always good to go back and review the chapter before because everything's going to build. So hopefully that's a little bit of a reminder, but everybody sees the xylem then. Oops. There's another picture of it on the right down here. You can see all the vascular bundles in the stem. And then do you remember what it looks like in the leaf? The vascular tissue, right? The veins. And then you have your xylem and your phloem as those come up and then branch into the leaf. Okay, so we'll go back then. This is where we were. So that second bullet, that's just talking about how the water gets into the xylem in the first place. You do need to know the purpose of the root hairs. So did you guys see those in the picture? Here. Okay, they're not really hairs. It's more like cytoplasmic extensions that come out. But what do you think is their job? Yeah, they're going to increase the surface area for what though? Water absorption, okay? So it just allows it to get the most water, especially in the case of my plants when I forget to water them all the time. They need all the water absorption that they can get, and we already talked about the endodermis being that selective barrier that only lets certain minerals in and certain amount of water so that what's supposed to get into the vascular system can get in. Okay, are we good? Okay, this is just a general picture showing you the movement of water. Of course, it moves in through the roots, up through the stem, and then here is the vascular tissue in the leaf. What kind of leaf is this? C3 or C4? C3, normal, right? Not C4. C4 was the one that has the parallel. Right, the parallel vein. So that's the stuff that has to be, you have to go back over, remember guard cells, epidermis, what's this? Palisades, spongy, okay, just reminding you of stuff. Okay, so, okay, the two ways that things move through the xylem, you already know the main way. Cohesion and adhesion driven by what though? Cohesion and adhesion by themselves are not a movable force. Yes. Okay? Transpiration is the fancy name for that. And there's actually a whole lab that you're supposed to do, which I'm feeling with the snow, we are for sure not going to get to. It's kind of a stupid thing. You take like all different kinds of leaves and you you take plants and you kind of like either put them in stands or tape them to the wall or something like that, and then you do different things to them. Sounded bad. You take a fan and like blow air on them, so you can like measure the effect of like wind on transpiration. You already know. You're washing your car and it's windy. What happens? Water evaporates quicker. Okay. So wind. What else is going to make evaporation happen quicker?
Heat.
Heat. Hot, dry, and windy. The hotter, the drier, and the more windy, the quicker transpiration is going to take place. There was the whole lab. That's basically what you're supposed to learn. So basically we know that the air is going to have lower water potential than in the leaf, because the leaf is, if things are working right, water is continually coming up from the soil through the roots up into the leaf, and then the air is going to have less water than that, and so it's going to evaporate out. Transpiration, except when? Because the stomates are closed. So at night, you don't really have transpiration happening because the stomates are closed. Also, you try to minimize transpiration when it is really hot and dry. The stomates are going to close, even during the day. But anyway, that is the main method. So the actual force, I guess you would say, that's making the water move is the kind of the sucking of the water as it leaves through evaporation. And then cohesion and adhesion, because all the water molecules are sticking to themselves, cohesion, as the ones at the top leave, they're kind of dragging all the ones up from the bottom, and they also adhere to the inside of the cells, so that makes it move. Okay, I think we get that, right? This is more of a factor at night, but it's called root pressure. And don't try to read it, let me just explain it to you. Basically, what root pressure is that the endodermal cell, the epidermis, basically can pump ions into the root. So what's going to happen to the inside of the root cells? They're going to become hypertonic, and what's going to happen to the water? It's going to flow in, and guess what? It's going to form pressure because it's actually rushing in fairly fast. It's going to push. Okay? That's called root pressure. The most that you can push from the bottom is about 6 feet high. So in other words, if you have a tree that's like 20 feet tall, root pressure is not going to supply water to the leaves. What it will do is kind of keep the water kind of moving in at night, even when you're not having a lot of evaporation. So you don't form a lot of air bubbles. So root pressure is important, but it only aids in the movement of water through the xylem. Most of it is from the transpiration and cohesion and adhesion. Make sense? Everybody get what root pressure is? Okay, this little drawing is just showing you. Here is in the soil. We have this is just relative, a -1 water potential. And then here in the actual stem, it's saying that it's -10. Why is it less in there? Because it's concentrated minerals from the soil in through, this is the endodermis here, into these cells, and then the minerals move into the stem. And so they're going to be hypertonic. That's going to lower the water potential, and they're going to move in. The water potential, according to this drawing, is the very lowest here in the epidermis. Why? Evaporation. And the same thing, here's like the palisades and the spongy, these are the mesophyll cells, very low water potential. So the water potential is lowest up in the leaf compared to the roots, and so the water is going to keep coming in and it's going to keep moving. But without transpiration, this is not true. In other words, it's not just water potential that's causing it to move. So this picture just kind of showed the transpiration and pressure. So.
Wait, you said that transpiration is
Well, it will, because also as the water evaporates out, doesn't that lower the water potential?
At the top,
Yeah.
Wait, but then what did you say about,
Well, it's not just that the water potential is lower that's causing it, it's actually kind of the pressure from, like the sucking pressure, so to speak, of the water leaving by evaporation because of the cohesion. Okay, makes sense? Okay? This is all just about the guard cells. Obviously, transpiration, since it controls the movement of water through plants, it has to be controlled, and we don't really need to do this because we already talked about this. This is the whole guard cell deal. Okay? So this is just talking about when there's no water, the guard cells are going to be closed, and when there is water, they're going to be open, and it talks about the chemiosmosis, which we already talked about, and it also talks about the active pumping of the protons being activated by light and low CO2, which we also covered. What I do want to show you is the picture, okay? These are, when the guard cells are empty of water, they become closed, and because of the structure of the cellulose in the cell walls, when it fills with water, it bows the cells out, which now opens the stomate. So this is like, instead of looking at the stomate like this from the side, it's if you picked up the leaf and you were looking at it flat.